Well, hello everybody. I've got a no start condition on this Lawn Boy lawnmower here, and I know for a fact it's something inside the carburetor's plugged up. So we're going to take this off and clean it up and see if we can get it running. There has been no fuel in it to gum it up, but there may still have been a little bit in the bowl. So this is what I'm going to attack here. I'd recently done this John Deere over here, put in a new battery, new filter, got it running good. I got this from my dad for fixing a mower of his. He couldn't stand it, and I can't stand it either. This thing's ridiculous. It's going up on the auction block. The main complaints we have with that mower, just as an FYI, is if you're trying to mow up to a fence or something in a corner, the blade is all the way back here and there's a good 8 or 10 inches where you just cannot get anything to cut. Secondly, if there's a leaf on the ground, it will not suck it up. It just blows it all over the place. It's long, it's cumbersome, it's difficult to maneuver, especially in tight places, and it's relatively slow, even though I've got the speed turned up on it. It will move fast, but it's just not any good. Okay, well, we need to gain access to the carburetor to remove it, so we need to get the shroud off the top. I've just simply unhooked the pull rope from the top up there, take off the gas cap. There are 3 of these screws right here, 1, 2, 3. Remove those, and then this will lift off. I'm just going to lift it up a little and just put the cap back on so I don't spill any fuel. And underneath here, you may not be able to see it, the primer bulb hose comes right up here. I'll get that off. We can just set this aside. Now the tank is almost ready to move off, aside from unhooking the fuel line on the other side, which we'll do that. I do have fuel in here, so what I'm going to do is pull it off, and I'll tilt it up and I'll lean it up against the wall or something to keep all the fuel in the tank. The fuel line connects right here, so I'm going to pull the line off and then quickly pick up the tank to try to lose as little gas as possible. And there we go. You can see it has some fuel in it. So I'll put this aside and then we'll remove the carburetor. We need to get the air cleaner out and the outer portion of the air box off of it. This lid should come off just like so. Pull out the filter. And there we go. There are 2 of these long bolts right up in here. I've got one of them out. I've got the other one loose just to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to try to work the carburetor out. Pull this out of the way. There you go. You have to kind of fight with this right here, the throttle. There is a plate back here, and there is a gasket that goes on the back side of this plate. There's also a gasket right here. There's a spring right here. It's very difficult to see that's in this little black arm. Just need to position this. Try to get that out of there. There we go. So now we have the carburetor in the hand. I will be removing this right here as well, loosening up this bolt and taking this off so I can clean this whole air box here. Okay, well, the first thing I'm doing is cleaning off as much of the gunk on the outside as I can before we take it apart, so I can handle it, not get any of this nasty stuff on the inside, and then it will take a trip through the ultrasonic cleaner to get it sparkling clean. Just a little fuel and a little bit of work here is all I'm going to do. Okay, well, I've done a cursory cleaning. First bathed it in some fuel and cleaned it with a brush, and then I took it to my sink and rinsed it off, and then put just some Dawn Ultra all over it and worked it with a toothbrush and rinsed it off in hot water. So this is what we're left with here. It will get another cleaning beyond that. But in order to get this apart, let's start with the fuel line. It may be loose enough to where you can crack it loose and get it off with your hands, or spin it with a little pair of pliers. There's that one. There's this little clip that goes over here to keep the lines routed, and then I'm going to try to pull this off if I can. Need a little screwdriver in there. Of course, I don't have one handy. I'm going to try to get underneath the bottom of it and just lift it up. I'm working around my camera, so it's hard for me to do some of these things. There we go, got that off. Now there may be some water or fuel in the bowl, but we're going after the bowl right now. So there should just be 4 screws in the bottom of this. Any gaskets you have on here, you might just leave them in place or carefully try to take them off. I always reuse them if they're in good shape. Take me just a minute to get this apart. Like I said, I'm working in around the camera and with a viewfinder, so it's kind of difficult sometimes. Now this bowl can only go on one way, so you don't have to worry about marking anything to reference its orientation. Yeah, there's some sludge in the bottom. That's from the water and whatnot that I was cleaning in there. So here's the float. It does have a cork float in it. I'm going to push this pin out and remove the needle and the float. So there's the pin. I'll carefully lift this up, and there we have the needle and the float. So now I'll rinse it off again and get some of this garbage out of here, and then it will be ready to go in the cleaner. Alright, the carburetor's ready to go into the cleaner. I did want to note here that there is a stainless steel mesh screen, a filter here on the end. I've broken these out into 2 piles just to let you know what I put through the cleaner and what I do not. Everything from here over I will drop in the ultrasonic cleaner and clean them. Like gaskets, things like this that I can get off without disturbing them, I run them underwater in the sink with some Dawn Ultra dish soap, and I clean all these components by hand, including the needle, the float, all that jazz right there. Once I get this finished and put back together, then I'll clean the air box and all the other things off camera, and then we'll install it and see how it works. But one thing I did want to note is I mentioned I knew that it was a carburetor issue. How do I know that? Well, it wouldn't start. So the first thing to do would be to get some carburetor cleaner, maybe shoot it in here a little bit, and then pull it and see if it runs. Mine did. It fired up, it ran, and then it died once it spent what I'd put in through there. So a fuel delivery issue is my problem. It could either have been a stuck float, this screen mesh garbled up to where no fuel could escape it, the main jet right here, or possibly particulate in the needle and seat right here. And there's some other passages and whatnot that'll get cleaned out with the ultrasonic cleaner. Alright, well, I've got the parts loaded up in my ultrasonic cleaner. I'm just simply using water with some Dawn Ultra. Depending on how dirty things are, you know, I might use some simple green, or if it's not aluminum, maybe some purple power. But this should do the trick. I'll run it through a couple of cycles here, and then they'll come out of the bath. They'll go directly to the sink. They'll get washed off with super hot water and blown off with compressed air to dry them off. As well as any hole or orifice, I will blow air through all these holes, and then I'll inspect them with a light shining in various places to make sure all of the passageways are open. So here we go. Alright, well, it's super clean and it's ready to go back together. I'm going to start with the needle and insert it right here, and then install my pin. There we go. Make sure to get the screen back on here. And now I'm ready to put the bowl on. But if you take gaskets off, you can normally see how they went back together or how they came apart. I always put them back together the way they came off. I can see a little raised rim right here, and then there's one here where it's been depressed in there. That's the way it's going to go on. Just like that. Simple here. I'm just going to put all 4 of these screws in and tighten up the bowl. Alright, bowl's been tightened up. Just need to put the primer tube back on right here. Make sure the clip goes over this like it was. And install the fuel line. And that's it as far as the carburetor goes. It's very simple. Alright, well, I've got the air boxes and everything cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and show how this goes together on the bench because it'll be easier to see. Here's the two bolts and the holes where they go. I'm just going to start these in there just a little ways to where they stick out the back. And then I'm going to mount this gasket right here. It's kind of difficult to get all this put together with just two hands, but it can be done. So once I get it like that, on this governor here, that little spring is hanging off. I'm going to tilt it up this way and hook it on that lever and then come over this butterfly and then line it up and stick it on. And then at this point I can go ahead and stick my bolts the rest of the way through to kind of hold this together. Now you need to make sure that this operates like it's supposed to. And if your mower, just as an FYI, isn't running at the proper speed, this white ring right here, you can turn this and it'll go click click. I'm not sure which direction, but it'll increase or decrease the RPMs. And then make sure that this, when you push this down, engages the butterfly properly. And that's all you need to do. I'm not sure if I'm going to need to put this cable on before or after I mount the carburetor. I'd rather do it after if I can because I won't have to fight it. And then of course the next gasket will go on right here. And then this aluminum heat shield goes on like so. And then there's one more gasket that is attached to the motor. If yours came off for any reason, you need to put that on. And then hold it up in there. You have to fish this up into a slot, kind of like this. And then get it in, tighten up the bolts, and then we'll move on to the fuel lines. Alright, well I was a little incorrect in the last clip. I thought I was going to be able to slide everything up in there as one unit. I could not. I couldn't navigate it in there with this heat shield. So I had to take it off. And then once I got it slid up in here, I slid the heat shield down on where it went, as well as put in this plastic piece because there's a pin that goes up in that to keep it from falling out. So now everything is buckled up. Alright, well I went ahead and emptied my tank and cleaned the tank up. It was pretty nasty, as well as gave the rest of the mower just a bath. So I'm just going to start by putting this primer hose up through the tank and making my connection on the bottom. Pull off the gas cap, bring the shroud up. I'm going to make this connection up to the bottom of it from beneath. You can't see this part. So at this point, I just need to put my 3 screws back in here, put my pull rope up where it belongs. I've cleaned the air cleaner. I need to oil it, stick it in. We're going to put some gas in it and see if it works. Alright, well I've saturated the air cleaner with 30 weight oil and installed it. Put some gas in it. This is a cold start. Let's see what we get. Well, I'd say it works.